Good morning, Year 6. I hope you're all safe and I hope you're all well. Today is the 17th of June 2020. We're continuing our unit on statistics and we're going to look at pie charts again, but in a bit more detail. I know a few of you have emailed me to say you're finding pie charts are a bit difficult, so that's fine. So hopefully we'll go over it today and that should help clarify a few things. If you're still finding it a bit tricky, do get in touch, because I do have some additional resources that I can and links that I can share with you. So do get in touch if you're finding it tricky still. Our learning intention, as I said, is to solve problems involving a pie chart. So write that down. Remember to write your date in Roman numerals, and we will begin. So for today's lesson, you'll need a pencil, paper, you'll need your thinking hats, you'll need the worksheet that was emailed to you this morning. You may need your protractor, so it's good to have it on hand, and you'll need a 5-minute timer. Check. So for our starter today, we're going to be looking at converting from decimals to percentages. We know that to convert from decimals to percentages, or to convert from percentages to decimals, we're looking at multiplying or dividing by 100. So if we're trying to get from 50% to a decimal, we divide by 100 and 50% becomes a decimal number. So I'd like you then to pause the video here and try to match up the percentages to the decimals. Excellent. Now let's go through the answers. 50% is the same as 0.5. So if you're trying to find 50% of an amount, it's the same as multiplying by 0.5. Finding 10% of an amount is the same as multiplying by 0.1. 5% is the same as multiplying by 0.05. And finding 20% of an amount is the same as multiplying by 0.2. So well done if you managed to get those. So our starter today is in two parts. So for the second part of our starter, I'd like you to use what we've just talked about. We talked about how we can multiply by a decimal number is the same as us finding the percentage of that amount. So 0.5 we said is the same as finding 50%. So if 0.5 is the same as finding 50%, then 0.5 times 100 will give us the same answer that 50% of 100. 0.2 is the same as 20%. 0.1 times 100 is the same as finding 10%. So you can use a number of methods here. You can convert the decimals into percentages and then use that to help you find the percentage of that amount. Or you could just do 0.5 times 100 and you might want to use the column method for that. But I personally would probably convert them into percentages and do it that way. Okay, so I want you to pause the video here, set your 5-minute timer, and off you go. Brilliant. Here are our answers on screen. So 0.5 times 100 equals 50. And that makes perfect sense. We know 1 times 100 will give us 100. 0.5 is half of 1, so our answer is going to be half of that. 0.2 times 100 gives us 20. 0.1 times 100 gives us 10. 0.4 or 40% of 100 gives us 40. 0.9 gives us 90, and 0.25 times 100 gives us 25. And if you have a look all the way across, you'll see all the answers. So well done if you managed to get those. And if you didn't, don't worry, it's something we can keep practicing. I really want to hone in on our fractions, decimals, and percentages. So don't worry if you didn't get it. We'll keep practicing it. But do email me as well if you're finding it difficult, because I do have plenty of resources that I'm happy to share with you. Okay, resources and links that I'm happy to share with you. So do get in touch. So as I said before, we're going to be looking at reading and interpreting pie charts today and using that to help us solve problems. So you'll see a pie chart shown on screen which shows where 480 people have been on holiday. They're holiday destinations. We can look at our pie chart like this, and we can try and work out exactly how much each segment is worth. But there is a way that we can make it even easier. We can split up our pie chart into equal segments, and that can help us to work out exactly how much each segment is worth. 480 divided by 8, because we split it into 8 equal parts. 480 divided by 8, well, we could do 48 divided by 8, and that would give us 60. So 480 divided by 8 gives us 60. 48 divided by 8 would be 6, and 480 divided by 8 would be 60. So now we know that each segment is worth 60. We can work out from there how much each destination is, how many people went to each destination. How many people went to France on holiday? Well, if we know that one segment is worth 60, we can see France is worth 2 of those, so 2/8 of our pie chart, which makes it 120. If we were to do the same for Portugal, we can see that Portugal is just one segment out of our 8, so that makes it 60. Greece, again, is one segment, so that's also 60. And Spain is half of our 480. So half of 480 gives us 240. So our answer to question 1 is 120. Now, for question 2, it asks what fraction of the people chose to go to Spain and Portugal? What fraction? So we're not asking for a value here, but a fraction. If we look at Spain, we can see quite clearly that Spain makes up half. So that's our fraction for Spain. And if we look at Portugal, we can see it's one segment out of 8. So that makes it 1/8. So what is 1/2 plus 1/8? Well, we need to make sure that they have a common denominator. We're going to convert our half into 8. What would half be in 8? Yep, that's right. It would become 4/8. 4/8 is the same as 1/2. Now we can add them together. 4/8 plus 1/8 equals 5/8. So that's our answer. The fraction of people that chose to go to Spain and Portugal is 5/8. Now, for the last question, how many more people went to Spain than Greece? So if you have a look at Spain, we're looking at the value. We know that Spain was 240 people, and we know that Greece was 60 people. We need to find the difference from 60 to 240. We can do that in a number of ways. We can count on from 60 to 240. Or we can subtract 60 from 240. 240 minus 60, well, the way that we can do that is ignore the 0 on 240 and ignore the 0 on 60. What's 24 minus 6? That's right, it is 18. So what's 240 minus 60? We'll put that 0 back on and we get 180. So 180 more people went to Spain than Greece. A netball team played 42 games and a cricket team played 24 games in a season. Their results are shown in these pie charts. Now, I want you to look at the statements and explain if you agree or disagree with each child. Remember, the wins are represented in green on our pie charts, the losses are represented in yellow on our pie chart, and the draws are represented in orange on our pie chart. Orange or red, whichever colour you think it looks like. So looking at the pie charts, it seems like both teams won the same number of games, said Henry. Do you agree or disagree? So, pause the video here and think about your answer. Remember to always look at the total number of games that each of the teams played. The cricket team played 24 games, whilst the netball team played 42 games. Have you thought about your answer? Super. Let's discuss. So, we can see that the cricket team played, as we said, they played 24 games in total. We can see that they won half of their games. What is half of 24? Yep, that's right, it's 12. Whereas the netball team also won half of their games, but they won 42 games. And what is half of 42? 21. So, Henry, I'm afraid you're incorrect. The netball team won half their games, which is 21, and the cricket team only won 12 games. Remember, you always need to look at the total number of games or total number that the pie chart represents when you're making that comparison. Now let's look at what Daria says. Daria says, I think the cricket team must have drawn more games than the netball team. Do you agree or disagree? And explain why. Pause the video here whilst you think about your answer. Brilliant. So, let's discuss. Well, Daria says the cricket team must have drawn more games. Now let's look at the section on our cricket pie chart, on the pie chart representing the cricket team. We can see that they drew a quarter of their games. Can you remember how many games they played in total? Because that's the most important thing here. We know that they played 24 games in total. What's a quarter of 24? 24 divided by 4 gives us 6. So we know that they drew 6 of their games. Now let's look at the netball team. We can split the pie chart for the netball team into six equal parts. So we look at the smallest part that we have there, and we see if we split that up into all parts being the same size as that, then we know what it represents. So the netball team played 42 games in total. 42 divided by 6 gives us 7. Why am I dividing it by 6? Because we have split it up into 6 segments. So now we know that one of those segments represents 7. So we can see now that they drew 7 of their games, whereas the cricket team drew 6 of their games. So did the cricket team draw more games? No, the netball team did. They played a greater number, so they actually drew more, although it might not look like it on there. The proportion of games that the netball team drew was less than the cricket team, but the cricket team didn't actually draw more games, but they did draw a greater proportion of their games. Okay, so Daria is in fact incorrect. Now let's look at another question together. We're going to use the pie chart to find the number of wins, losses and draws that each team had. So this is where I would like you to just pause the video here. Remember to look back at the total and write down the wins that the cricket team had, the losses and the draws, and do the same for the netball team. Excellent. Let's go through. So the cricket team, they won half of their games, and half of 24 is 12. They drew a quarter of their games, and a quarter of 24 is 6, and they lost another quarter, which is 6. Now over to the netball team. The netball team won 21 games. They drew 7 games, and they lost 14. 2 segments would make 14 because one segment represents 7. I know you all managed to get that, so well done. And if you didn't, don't worry, it's not the end of the world. Maybe play it back, watch it again at your own pace. You will get it. Persevere, persevere, persevere. Now let's look at the insects in a garden. This pie chart shows the number of different insects that were found in a back garden. Now looking at this pie chart, just straight off the top of your head, you can see that butterfly was the most popular insect to have been found in the garden, whereas the wasp, the bee and the dragonfly were the least popular, but we're not exactly sure of the figure just yet. But there is a way that we can help make it easier. We can split it into smaller segments, like we have been doing. Now we can see that there are, how many segments do you think there are altogether? That's right, there are 16. So there are 16 segments altogether. And we can see that the green one, which represents the wasp, is 1 out of the 16. So 1/16 were wasps, 1/16 were bees, and so on and so forth. I'm sure you can work out the rest. If the number of bees found in the garden was 6, then how many insects were found in the garden altogether? Brilliant. I'm sure you know exactly what to do here. So we take the number of bees, which is 6, and we're going to multiply it by a number. What number are we going to multiply it by? That's right, we multiply it by 16. 6 times 16, and we get 96. Now, I shouldn't have shown you the answer there, but there is a really easy way to work out 6 times 16, because if, like me, you didn't go all the way up to learning your 16 times tables off by heart, and even though you learnt your 6 times tables off by heart, you stopped at 12, there's another way that we can work this out. And I've talked to you about this before in previous lessons. What we can do is we can double that 6. When you double 6, you get 12. But if we double one number, we have to halve the other that we're multiplying by. So instead, we do 12 times 8. And most of us would have learned our 12s and 8 times tables. 12 times 8 also gives us 96. So that would have been another way to have worked that out really easily. Now we know that there are 96 insects in this garden altogether. How many more woodlice were found than wasps? So if we look at the section which represents the woodlouse, which is represented in yellow, we can see that that's 4 of our 16, so 4/16. So a quarter of our total, 4/16 can be simplified to a quarter. So a quarter of our total was woodlouse. We know that we had 96 altogether. So we need to think, what is a quarter of 96? Well, to find a quarter, we can just halve it and halve it again. So we can do it that way, or we also know that one segment is worth 6. So we could just do 6 times 4, and 6 times 4 would give us 24. So we know that there were 24 woodlouse. How many wasps were there? Well, we can see, remembering that one segment represents 6, we know that there were 6 wasps. So we do 24 minus 6. We need to find the difference. You might prefer to count on from 6 all the way up to 24. Either way, you'll get the same answer, which is 18. 4 times 6 is 24. 24 minus 6 is 18. Now for our next question. Are you ready? The butterflies that were found were either red admirals or painted ladies. 1/4 were painted ladies. How many red admirals were found? So now we are looking at the butterfly section alone. We can see the butterflies represented half of the total number of insects. Can you remember the total number of insects we had in the garden? That's right, we had 96. What is half of 96? Super, it's 48. Now you know how many butterflies there were in total. I want you to pause the video here and work out how many red admirals were found. Brilliant. Let's go through. So 48 is our new total when we're looking at the butterflies. 1/4 of 48 were painted ladies. What's 1/4 of 48? That's right, we take our 48, we divide it by 4, and we multiply it by 1 to find out exactly how much there was. So 1/4 of 48 is 12. Now we know that 12 of them were painted ladies. The remainder was red admirals. So what's the difference between 12 and 48? Yeah, just follow your 12 times tables. We know that 12 times 4 gives us 48. So if we've already taken off one of those 12s, then we've got 3/4 left. 1/4 was 12. 3/4 is going to be 12 times 3, which gives us 36. So there were 36 red admirals found. Are you ready for our last question? The next day, the total number of insects found was the same. 12 of these insects were grasshoppers. What fraction of the chart would be grasshoppers? So remember, the total number of insects found was the same. So 96 were found. 12 of them were grasshoppers. Now we're thinking about that as a fraction. Remember, 96 is our total. So if 12 out of 96 of them were grasshoppers, that alone could be our fraction, 12 over 96. But although whilst 12 out of 96 is correct, we can also simplify that fraction even further. So 12 out of 96 can be simplified down to 1/8. Can be simplified to 1/8 because 12 divided by 12 is 1 and 96 divided by 12 is 8. So we can simplify that down to 1/8. But if you've got any other equivalent fractions, you are correct. So if you've got 2/16, or if you just kept it as 12 over 96, you're not wrong. But you could always simplify it, and always try to simplify it when you can. So that marks the end of our lesson today. So I'd like you to now have a look at the worksheet that was emailed to you this morning, and I'd like you to have a go at completing the tasks. Remember, we are expecting your work at the email address shown on screen, which is yr6@grange.harrow.sch.uk. Have a fabulous day, Year 6. Bye.